Hello and welcome to another episode of Throttle Stop Garage. In today's episode, we're going to have a look at Revopoint's MetroX Blue Laser Scanner. Stay tuned. Alright, so if you've watched our previous review episodes, you know that we've tested a few 3D scanners, and I contacted Revopoint and asked if I could have a look at the brand new Revopoint MetroX. It's a different style of scanner than the kinds of scanners I've used before, and I wanted to give it a go. So they agreed, they sent me this one, but I also, as always, I promised to give it a fair and honest review. So we're going to have a look at how this particular $1,000 scanner performs in the garage. Okay, I just thought I would show you quickly what's in the kit. So with the Revopoint MetroX, first of all, you get a nice case, which is kind of cool. So that's the way it comes. The dual axis turntable is here, and we'll have a go with that in the video. All the cables and other things are there. The actual scanner is this right here. So that's the MetroX itself. Again, not a big unit, and this is different from the other scanners that I've used where I'm able to process the scans on the scanner unit. This is just a scan head, and then you use your PC, or in my case Macintosh, to make this work. It also came with a marker block kit, so this is quite helpful. Actually really like this, right? There's magnetic marker blocks, so you can just place those on objects. It also has some standoffs in here that you can screw down to things like the turntable if you need to get markers in place. Most of the scanning done with this thing is going to be marker style scanning. It also does do feature-based scanning. There's lots of stuff in the kit, different sized octagon ball type things, triangles, dots, which we're going to use. There are specific requirements for the PC for this thing. So this is MacBook Pro M4 Pro. Just, you do need some, this is where the processing power is inside the laptop. And targets of choice. Today I'm going to be scanning a couple of objects. As always on the channel, I'm trying to focus on real things that you would do. I'm not trying to scan stuff that you wouldn't need a scan for. So this is a bell housing for the engine that I'm going to be putting in my project car. Again, the project car, oh gosh, let's not look at that. And I need to get a reasonable scan of this bell housing. It's complicated. And honestly, by the time I figure out where all the holes and the everything goes, it's not worth my time. This is where a scanner is going to be super helpful to get this kind of stuff up onto the model and into being able to fit things into it and onto the car. Just for reference, if you do have big open holes in the past when I've done scanning, it really is to your advantage to seal up those holes. The scanner will fight with that. So in this case, just a little bit of, I've got some black foam board lying around the garage, did that. And then I've got the whole bell housing placed on a turntable, and then I've just put in, I've just painted the piece of wood that I have it sitting on black for no reason other than it'll scan better. And we'll be trying out all the different modes and operating procedures for this scanner. So we'll show you how it works. All right, without any further from me, let's get on to putting some scanning dots onto the bell housing, and then I'll show you how we're going to make that scan work.
I think it goes without saying that you got to have the object clean, so you can see that I've gone through, cleaned up that bell housing really nicely. And I'm also making a few mistakes here, but I'm leaving it in. What the heck? So you get to see it. I'm putting some of those dots onto the machine surface. Definitely don't want to be doing that because it creates holes on my machine surface. So I did have to go back after a test scan and then take those off, obviously, because I just wanted the machine surface rendered properly. There's nothing else to it. It's not great, it's not exciting, but it does need to be done. It doesn't actually take all that long, so please don't comment that it takes forever and you don't like doing this. It doesn't take very long to do. It's not that big an inconvenience to get a good scan.
Okay, I thought I'd give you a quick look. I have done a test scan, and the scan worked out great, but it could be optimized. We could fix a few things, so let me just show you what I learned. So in terms of the dot pattern I don't actually, it probably looks like I have too many dots here, but I don't. So for each area that we scan, there has to be at least 5 dots in the scene. I then wanted to remove the dots from 2 surfaces, right? I had a bunch of dots placed around this machine flange up at the top where the transmission bolts to. I needed to remove those because they're just creating holes and artifacts and problems. This shouldn't be an issue. And the other thing was I needed to make sure I stayed away from the edge down here. That was another problem. So I want to make sure I've got enough dots for coverage. It'll pick everything up, but I want to also make sure that I don't have dots in places where the editing of the dots later becomes problematic. I can also scan this just using a feature mode, right? Like I don't have to use the laser mode to do this, but to be honest, I mean, with my experience with scanning, just about everything I've scanned so far needed to be sprayed in order to get a reasonable scan out of it. And I'm getting awesome results out of this without having to spray. So I guess it's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Choose your master. Now, next up is the settings for the scanner. Okay, so in the computer software over here, I'm going to switch my tracking modes. There's several different tracking modes. There's marker tracking, so that will try to do the scan and pick up the markers at the same time. And then the second mode, which is the mode we're going to be using right now, is this global mode. And what the global mode does is it just creates a scan of the dots. That's it. Okay, so there's no actual image content in here. This is just the pattern of the dots. Then once you go into the next step where you're scanning your point cloud, then it doesn't need to be looking for dots. It already knows where the dots are. And then I don't lose tracking. Everything remains fixed. And I'm in and out of there a lot more quickly than I have been with any other scanner that I've used so far. So this has worked out really, really well. So I'm just going to hit new scan. I'm going to leave that one in there. I just wanted to show you that. That's why it's still there. Everything else is sort of as it is. Okay, so the scanner is now on, but I'm in this tracking mode where I'm just trying to get the dots. All right, so in order to start it, I do have a start button over here on the side. I can then just cover the whole system, and as long as I'm picking up the red dots and everything is good, then we're fine. Okay, so we're going to start with this. So we're just going to push that button, and then I'm going to start scanning. So you don't have to wait a whole long time for this. As long as it's got the dots, you can scan around the object pretty quickly, actually. It still isn't going to lose tracking. Then the fun thing is, as it gets more and more complete, like as you've got all the markers in, it almost doesn't matter. Like you can move this thing pretty fast. It just doesn't lose tracking. Yeah, so I'm already done there. You know, like I can rotate that almost as fast as I dare. And like nothing bad's happening here. Right? You can see that model's rotating at the same rate. It's able to pick up the dots. Just want to make sure there's some areas here that look entirely... If it finds them, then it'll add them in. Okay, and when I'm happy with that, I can just pause it, go back, and I can say complete. Okay, and then I can go to cloud scan, which is going to scan the actual object. Okay, so now you can see over here on the bell housing itself, I've got the laser blades. Okay, so they've come in, they're nice and sharp. Now at this point I should probably start the scan, hey? We'll get it. All right. Then all we're trying to do here is, you can see on the computer, if it's red, doesn't have enough points, right? Point cloud's not dense enough. But as it goes green, then I've got enough points. So I can just quickly zip around, get the points that I need, and get this scan moving. The first thing I'm going to do is just use the fusion, and the markers are 6 millimeters. If you leave it at less than 6, then the holes that it creates when it's removing the markers are then smaller than the marker, and you end up with a little ridge at the hole, and I don't like that because that's not the way I want it. So, all right, it's processing. I'll come back when we get it all processed up. Okay, so we're back with the processing finished, and this is just the fused model. In essence, I haven't even processed this yet. This is just the first step. So there's still some fusing and some other things. We need to eliminate these pieces at the bottom. A few of the other things need doing, but most of that's pretty straightforward. So I'm not going to try to bore you to death too much with it. I usually prefer just to go through it all myself. That's just a me thing. I don't know why. I can control it just a little bit more. Sometimes it ends up smoother than I would like. So the isolations picked up a few things here, little floaties and other bits of nonsense, so we can get rid of that. We can then, I want to get rid of that base and the triangles and the stuff. So if I just try to orient this flat, that's pretty good. We'll get most of it here. Okay, so I can do that, delete it. So that's that gone. Okay, so I can roughly clean up that base. And you can see everything else, including that inner diameter, is come, like for this part up here, has come in really nicely. There's a few holes there. Okay, so there's areas where I've missed. I'm going to have holes, and we'll have to rely on the software to pick those up. Now, if I was super excited about it, I could always go in with this scan and just redo the scan part. Like, that wouldn't be a problem at all. Now I can smooth the point cloud at this point, but first, again, if we have a look down here, I've got 4.1 million points, which is sort of more than enough. So we can run that smooth function on it. I don't need the strength dialed to 10. So I don't want to smooth it to the point that I lose all my details, and then it can wash over it a couple of times. And this is processing. This is running on an M4 Pro. So we're not impeded really by processing speed. This is pretty violent as laptops go. It's certainly the fastest laptop that I own. And this is why the manufacturer is advising that you don't try to do this on an elderly PC or something. It just would not work. Okay, so that's the smoothed up version. So that's taking care of some of these finer texture pieces. Like, man, that looks awfully good to me. I've done zero work on this. All right, okay, there we go. Oh, those are actual holes. There's like, remember I said the ribs can be kind of problematic. It's hard to pick those up. It's easy to fill those. Okay, so we'll simplify this mesh just a little bit. I usually do the geometric fill because I'm not scanning uniform objects, and I just allow it to knock some of the point overlap and things out of it. We just don't need. We're going to end up with millions and millions of points. So we're at almost 4.2 million points right now. The smaller we make it here, the more it's just easier to work with later. Yeah, it took like no time. Okay, that's now 2.5 million points. That should still be more than good enough to get this done. You can see some of the areas where we're a little thin. But that is going to be no problem. Okay, so let's go and mesh this up. I can turn the hole filling on at this point to automatically fill holes, or I can go and fill holes later. So I'm going to fill holes later, and I'm just going to process this. Now it says it's going to take 3 minutes, and it probably will. So I'm going to let it process, and I'll come back and show you how that looks when I'm done. Okay, and we're back with the mesh. So that's now been, I've not done anything with these holes at this point, and you can see, like, yeah, you can still, I mean, again, this is with all of my reductions, and you can still read the lettering and the everything on this part, so that's pretty amazing. 7.8 million polygons, by the way. Oh, we're gonna be here. And I know I have 258 holes, dots. because it counted them for me already. So then you just select up the ones that you want to get rid of. Of course, I don't want to get rid of bolt holes. I don't want to get rid of other holes in the system here. So I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to select all these up, and we'll fill up the holes, and I'll come back and show you how the filled holes work. Just a few minutes later, we're done with the hole filling. All of them are now filled. You can still see the odd remnant, ghost, whatever, of where we filled the hole. But I haven't even gone through a smoothing step yet. Like, this is just, to me, this is pretty ridiculous. Like actually pretty full bore ridiculous. And even in places where, you know, you're not too sure about a shape or a something, you can always just go back and reference it and go, yeah, I totally forgot that there's a little divot. Like, there's a little divot right there. And there it is right there. Yeah, total time invested so far, half an hour. That's it. That's all there is, folks. Just half an hour worth of time. Okay, so let's smooth this up just a little bit again. We don't want it super strong, so we'll just apply that. And I do want to simplify it a little bit. Again, this is going to knock 40% out of it. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that took care of 3 million of the polygons. I, as usual, I can't tell the difference, so I might smooth it a little bit more. But yeah, you can then just feast your eyes on it. Okay, with that, I would put this in the bank. That's pretty good. Happy with this scan. Again, the time, that's the quickest that I've ever had any scanner work for me operationally. In that mode, when you're doing that global marker mode, that's pretty nuts. Like, for this to work that well is ridiculous to me. Anyway, I am enjoying this, right? I fought and sweated and had blood, sweat, and tears with other scanners. But this one is working out really well. If you're trying to develop parts, you're trying to get a scan of your car, parts that are like this would be devilishly difficult to actually render. I mean, it's not going to be hard to render the face and the bolt hole circle and the whatever. It'll take a lot longer than 40 minutes to get that done. This exports out in every single format. Somebody asked that in one of the prior videos. So yeah, I mean, it exports out. I can send the mesh model out in any format I like. Like, what's the format that you're interested in? There's 6 different ones. Whatever CAD software you use, this goes straight in. You do have to have a computer that can handle a mesh with 5 million polygons, but there are also ways outside of the software, independent mesh software packages that can just hammer this mesh down to something a lot more reasonable, and that's where I do that. So I would be perfectly happy to stop this scan now and say, that's as close as I need this part to get. Let's move on and show you some of the other party tricks.
The dual axis turntable connects to this thing wirelessly, and all you have to do is put your part on the turntable with some marker blocks, and the rest basically is magic. Right? So it's going to spin the part around, it does everything for you. I admit to being a little lazy with this stuff, but to me, this is absolutely what I want. Pure magic. The second axis on the turntable allows me to have the part rotated towards and away from the scanner, which improves that scanning accuracy. And as long as you don't go too far, which for this part was just a little shy of 20 degrees, it won't fall off and everything gets done. This is kind of cool. Alright, anyway, with that, let's have a look at the scan.
Okay, so here's the scan. There you go. You're seeing it in real time. That's the first I've seen it too. There's some cleanup to do around that top edge, and of course the throttle body itself would need a little bit of cleanup work there, but we can all admit that's an awfully good looking scan. That's just the raw fuse data, for heaven's sake. Holy cow. Well, here's the finished scan. For the amount of time that this didn't take, that's pretty amazing to me. me just take you for a spin around. You can even see that where the plastic is, it's glass filled with 30%. You can see the little holes and details all the way around that throttle body. You can see where they've broken off the casting lines, all the bits and pieces of the whole thing. You know, it's got the undersides of it done nicely. That's usable right there. Now that top edge was giving me a little trouble, nothing you couldn't fix up. So that's this edge here, as well as that inside throttle plate area. It's not perfect, but hey, you can go in and chop that out pretty easily. What you really want is things like bolt hole locations, right? You don't want to be measuring around trying to figure those out. Even the ones that are tucked in and hidden in behind the motor that drives the electronic throttle body. Yeah, they're right there. I know where they are. I can see them really easily. Great scan. As I started, what I did was just, put dots onto the fender, right? Try to find out how many marker dots I actually need on the fender. And then I let the software tell me where it needed more dots. I think this is probably the best and most efficient way to do it, rather than try to imagine that you can figure out what this kind of technology needs. It'll tell you. Just listen to it. So it said, well, I need more dots here, or I need more dots there. And you end up with a pretty good coverage of dots. This is what I've put on just to do this fender. But again, we're doing that global scan. So what we're doing is we're first mapping all the dots, and then we're coming back and with the scanner scanning it after, basically scanning the feature later. I found this to be the absolute bomb for doing this kind of work. It's quite frustrating if you just try to do it with features alone. Again, check out my other videos. I can show you the pain involved with doing that. This doesn't take a ton of time. It's not actually all that inconvenient if you're trying to get a good scan of something. Because in essence, as soon as you're done with that global scan, it almost doesn't matter what you do with the scanner. As you're scanning it, it locks into the dots. It already knows where the dots are. That fixes your position, and it allows you to get some good scan results. Okay, once you've got that global scan done, you can verify that you've got the dots that you should have, right? So you can scan around, you can see the fender's rough shape just in the dotted outline there. Pretty easy to kind of see how that all worked out. And if you see missing spots or holes, you can just go back and fill them in. But now what we're going to do is switch it over. So we're going to say we're complete, right? The software there, and then it's going to go into a scan mode. So now we're going to be picking up the scan blades, right, as we're going. So it'll do this. It's the cloud scan. That's what we want to do. And then it'll start, and you can see the blades now, nice and sharp on the object. And where they're intersecting is where you're scanning. Okay, so you do have to sort of keep an eye. If I can make sure I can get the shot. You do have to make sure you can keep an eye on where the crossed blades are, and then their rough size, right? So if you get, too close, too far away from the object, it's going to be difficult to scan. And then as you go, you can see that it's identifying those spots on the car. I'm not having any trouble. It doesn't really matter how fast I move this thing over this fender, because it knows where the dots are. Like, it knows the pattern, then it's picking it up, and that's working out great. All right, so at this point, let's scan this thing. This has been total, at this point, I've been out in the garage here for about 15 minutes, so the speed is also impressive. Okay, then as I'm scanning it, you can just watch, same as before, you're sort of drawing with light. You can see it on the computer screen pretty easily there. Once you've got a scan of the area, then it goes green, as you can see here. And then you can also see the areas where you need more points because they're orange. But the one thing to notice here is in the background, nothing bad or weird is happening. This is the way scanning is supposed to work, right? It's supposed to be just easy peasy. I can tell you that doing this versus using other methods that I've used so far, this is a lot less stressful. Like, I'm actually just sort of having a good time playing around with the thing. It's not causing me pain. It's not jumping all over the place. It's not doing things that I wish it didn't do. Stuff that I told you about last time, pausing, going slow. and kind of go as fast as I like, right? Like there, I can whip it around. It doesn't seem to care. As long as it can lock in on those points, it's a happy camper. So these are the things that when I was scanning with the other scanner, I was having a lot of trouble with some of the upside down parts. And I think I spent, hours getting that scan. I'm still talking to you. It's only been minutes. Well, it took about 5 minutes to process. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty bonkers, people. Okay, so I've not even done anything with this yet. There's no isolation that's been applied. I've not done any smoothing. I've not done anything. That's just the fusion of the points. I think we can all agree that doesn't look too bad.
I thought I would move this into the computer rather than hacking it by just videotaping me in the garage. So here we are with the final scan of the fender. Now, I've not spent a ton of time on this model, so I just wanted to give you a quick look around at how it looks. And it's awfully good. There's still a few areas down here. There's a little spot that isn't perfect. That's where I had one of the dots and I didn't go in and fill it. And there's another one right over here on the edge. There's a couple of spots here and there where the surface is a little dimpled. But, truthfully, this is about as good a scan as I've ever gotten for the fender. And I'm very, very happy. Like, the amount of time that I've spent on this so far, even in the computer, I think I might have spent half an hour or so just cleaning up a few of the dots. Using the tool over here on the side where I can go in and individually smooth areas was important. I simplified the mesh. I did all the rest of the stuff. Anyway, not trying to convince you of things that aren't actually there. There are some very, very tiny artifacts, nothing that would prevent you from using this as a model going forward. And if you spent a little bit more time with it, of course, you can clean all of that up. The idea behind most of these models, in case you've not watched other people's videos on it and you want my take, is most of these models are simply going in to allow you to create surfaces within the CAD software that you can then drape over and match this surface. So there's a way that you do that. So you don't end up using this model directly, although I wouldn't be offended if somebody did. Like if you were trying to make a mold for a fender and you wanted to scan it first, this would be a viable option for you, because the flaws that you see here are, in a final production, they're going to be almost imperceptible. I would note, for example, the front corner of the fender. This is still the carbon fiber fender as I pulled it out of the mold. Okay, so right here at the front, you can see, and this is not really perceptible on the part as it sits in the garage, but it is evident on the scan, which I found very interesting, is that's the part line right here, where I extended these fenders by 25 millimeters. They're not stock, and yet and you can see it picked up there. It'll be the lightest, like I'll pick this little imperfection up in just in high build primer. I will not need body filler to fix that. And about, I would say 1 hour total time. Like I've got 40 odd minutes maybe in the garage and about 20 minutes to half an hour down here in the basement in the computer to get a fender that's as clean as this. It's time well spent.
So in our test today of the MetroX by Revopoint, we scanned little things, medium-sized shiny things, and we also scanned big things. I can't show you the fender. And in all cases, the performance of that tool was just outstanding. For me, in my garage, I think this is going to be a tool that's going to be super useful coming up into the future. Okay, so that's a wrap. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget, like, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things that help the channel out. Hey, one day we might make it to 50,000 subscribers. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in, and don't forget, keep your stick on the ice.